was a weird order, but I'm just going to do it next. So I read a book called Roma Soy Yo, I Am Rome, by Santiago Posteguillo. Now, this guy writes a lot of very thick historical books. The downside of this book is that, okay, if I was going to tell you you're going to read a 700-page book about Caesar, what would you want it to be in it?
Caesar.
Caesar is in it.
Okay, good.
I
Brutus.
assume... Right, so that's
The
not
stabbing.
there. Nothing like that.
Didn't think so.
You would want to hear like about the first triumvirate, about Caesar seizing power in Rome, the stuff that led to the beginnings of the empire, Augustus, and none of that's in it. This is like young Caesar.
Oh.
And I'm disappointed by that.
Yeah, I can imagine.
So, now, luckily, this guy usually writes trilogies. So that means there will be the rest, I assume. This book came out last year.
Oh, okay.
He wrote a Scipio Africanus trilogy, he wrote a Trajan trilogy, and he wrote a two-part about Julia, which was like the wife of one of the emperors. I read one of those on the show before. It was very
Nothing
very
about
good.
Hadrian, so
Oh, yeah.
bad writer. Yeah.
This was a good book. I'm going to go ahead and give it a yeah.
This one was also 600 pages.
It's just difficult to say that it was fantastic because it doesn't cover the good stuff, but also because it's written in a strange way. It really, really, really follows the Anna Karenina method. The actual story could be told in 100 pages and is quite short, and then most of the book is like other stuff and flashbacks and different sections about different characters, basically. So it'll be like, here's 30 pages about the actual story, and then it's like, we mentioned that character. Here's 120 pages about him. And then we get back to the story. And I'm like, okay, the stuff that's happening in these flashbacks is relevant. It does inform the story, but why are you telling it like this? So the main story is a court case. Now, I like that. If you've listened to Patreon, Forensic Friends, you'll know that I like my ancient Greek court speeches. This is kind of like, what if we look at a Roman court case? There's a chap, Dolabella, who is like head man in Rome, and a young Julius Caesar is suing him in court. No one really sues a senator, so this is like a massive thing. And no one would do it, only this stupid young upstart boy who's almost guaranteed to end his political career with this. So that's the story. Everyone thinks Caesar doesn't have a chance of winning the case, and he does not win the case. So there's not even like that happy ending necessarily. But this is just about the case. So it'll be like, the main chapters of the story are the different parts of the court proceedings. So like the introductory kind of speech, then like bringing in the different witnesses, then like the summary at the end, that kind of stuff. Those are the different chapters that are the sections of the story. Then in between all of those is just like really long chapters like about the different characters, a bit about Caesar and his wife, a bit about like one of the witnesses or whatever. You could have just told it all in a linear way instead, potentially. Like, it's just a particular choice by the author. It just meant that I didn't care about any of the flashbacks. You know? If you told it in a linear way, it would have been building up to something. So instead, for example, like 200 pages from the end is like the big speech by Caesar. And then you're like, cool. So does he win the case or not? Why is there a 150-page interlude before we get to that? Obviously, I don't care about this anymore. I want to now see, did he win the case after that speech? I just want to get to the outcome. You know, he's given his big summary speech. Now I just want to get to like the judge's decision. But I've got to wade through like 150 pages about his friend that I don't care about. And that was a weird way to write the book for me. A little bit of backstory. So we kind of might look back on the Roman Empire and think, obviously there's like a lot of cool stuff there and historically and everything, but we assume empire's not good, dictators are not good, and that kind of thing. Caesar, of course, was never an emperor. His nephew Octavian, who became Augustus, was the first real emperor. At the time, what Caesar did was kind of good and necessary because the Roman Republic had become like so horribly corrupt. It was almost as bad as like the later day empire was. So like a change in regime was really, really overdue. You have the optimates and the populares. So you've got like basically the plebs, and then the optimates for like the rich senators. Basically, you've got these like equatorial class, which is slightly beneath them, the equites, and all. We don't need to go like too much into the structure, but basically, lots of like rich, overeating, oversexed, gluttonous, rich, corrupt senators. Basically, that's what you've got.
You see this even with like Marcus Aurelius times and all that. Comet is taking over, so that's quite common, it seems. Would you say that, I would say personally at least, like the Roman Empire was a net good?
It's difficult to say, but without the Roman Empire, I don't know how Europe would look right now.
Yeah.
Like, most of the countries that we have are still using, like, the Roman name, a version of the Roman names and things like that, the structure and everything.
Romania.
But even if you look at, like, I mean, even Spain, like, they called Hispania and that type of stuff. Like, most of Europe is still structured on very Roman boundaries. I guess there's an argument to say, well, they didn't change that much. They took over pre-existing areas and groups of people and things like that.
But then the technological advances and even, I think, like...
Well, what have the Romans ever done for us? Apart from the aqueducts and the sanitation. No, I think that potentially... You can say it's a net gain, but it's tricky because, like, they also
pillaged and
subjugated a lot of groups of people and all that kind of stuff. But look,
ask the Germans what they think about the Romans. Said net negative.
But you know what I'll say is there was a lot of attempts to fix things. So very famously, I remember from university, there were the Gracchi, the two brothers, Tiberius and Gaius, Sempronius Gracchus. Basically, they tried to bring in some reforms, and they got quashed. They were like low-level politicians. They couldn't really do anything. They got killed, potentially. And we see stuff like that in this book. Caesar is worried he will be killed for trying to overthrow the Senate, or for trying to just punish a senator for actual crimes he has committed. So there was a guy who they refer to as the dictator of Rome in this book, Sylla. Caesar realizes he's too young and Sylla's too strong. He's like, right, I just have to wait till he dies. I cannot fight him. And he kind of leaves Rome for like a few years. Because he almost gets killed. He comes back, and Sylla's protege, Dolabella, has become head man in Rome. But he thinks like he's maybe not as powerful, or it might be possible to stop him. And they've got real dirt on him. Like, there was one, he's meant to be over in Macedonia, and instead of sending all the money to fix all the things, he takes all the money for himself, and like all the public services there are going to ruin. Then he goes to like the famous temples of like the Greeks and is like, cool, I'm just gonna pillage them and take all the loot for myself.
Wow.
And just has like lots of big houses and all this kind of stuff, and he's like super rich. Then there is a long story, the summary of which is basically he rapes a girl. So he goes into the guy's house and makes the guy like wash while he rapes his fiancée, basically, and a whole bunch of men hold her down.
Wow.
And they obviously, that's one of the main things they sue him for. The problem is, despite the horrible things he's obviously done, everyone's just like, well, you can't sue a senator though. Like, they just have this almost immunity, you know? And Caesar is trying to say, we have to fix this system. Like, it is too corrupt. This guy can't just go around doing whatever he wants, just ordering people to be put to death, or to be attacked, or raped, or whatever. We can't have this. And they try to get witnesses, and the star witnesses are murdered like a week before the trial or something. And it's weird to me that the political system is so corrupt that no one questions that. They're just like, well, guess you got no witnesses for your case then. It's going to be even harder. And it's like, that is almost an admission of guilt, you know? Like,
can we maybe do a murder trial for these?
And even when they go to court, the judge is corrupt because the judge is a senator.
Of course.
And all the people involved are senators. And it's like, well, it's almost impossible to win. They get the crowd, like Caesar gives good speeches. In his very, very first speech, he deliberately gives a bad speech to like hustle them almost. And then he really, really goes on the attack later. And then they're scared. But he still loses because the cards are massively stacked against him. The guy who comes in to talk about all the works not being done is murdered. They get another guy who worked for him, but he's old and is going senile. And they, even though what he's saying is true, they just completely discredit him because he can't remember like what he's had for breakfast and things like that. So they're just like, well, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. He's an old senile fool, so how can you trust what he's talking about the money not being given for the public works? They were unable to distinguish, I guess, between like short-term and long-term memory loss and different things like that. So his evidence is completely discounted. Then the girl who was raped, they're just like, but she's a woman.
Yeah.
Evidence discounted. It's
yeah.
Like, oh, so how would you sue someone for rape then?
Now, would you then have to get her father to come in though? I think in that case that would technically still count, right?
There's
or the father or the husband.
So the husband, they weren't married yet. They were engaged. The father is there, but I think they threaten him with violence. I don't think he actually is willing to testify. The boyfriend was... Actually, there's a really, really sad thing where after it happens, and she's like there, like crying and bloody and all this kind of stuff, she goes to jump out the window and kill herself. And her fiance like catches her. She's like half out the window and saves her. And he's like, I love you, and I'm going to marry you. And the dad is like, you should just let her die. She's ruined. And that's really, really sad.
That is sad.
The one person that she actually was meant to have as her protector is like, no, you're ruined. So that's horrible. And of course, they immediately dismiss her. She gives like a really good speech, and they're just like, yeah, but you're a woman, so none of that matters. Next. There is a little bit in the book that shows the strength of women, though. So the two women in Caesar's life are Cornelia, which is his wife, and I want to say Aurelia, his mother. I can't remember if that's exactly right, but basically his wife and his mother. He mentions that his mother is the smartest... Initially, he says the smartest woman he knows, and then he's like, actually, let me retract that. You are the smartest person I know. And he goes to her for, like, advice a lot.
I think within nobility, though, or that type, that level, you can then have that type of respect. But if you are, like, a lower class, like, woman, you have nothing.
Yeah. It's a shame. He meets his wife when they're very young. It's an arranged marriage that's meant to be for the future. She's 9 and he's like 11, maybe 12. Like,
Okay.
So it's not he's not 20. But the thing is, she's like, look, I'm really sorry that you've kind of been stuck with me. This is a political thing. And he's like, yeah, you seem kind of cute. And they talk about reading Plato. And she's like, my dad won't let me read Plato. And he's like, I'll smuggle you in some Plato. And it's so nice. They bond over Plato. And then she's like, you're actually really handsome. And then they kind of fall in love as like pre-teens almost. And then it sticks forever.
And this is your ideal love story. Why do no girls do that to you, Dean?
If anyone would like to flirt with Plato, please get in touch.
At Books Boys.
Books Boys podcast on Instagram. So this is really nice, and it's still a bit weird because they're kids, right? But it sticks all through adulthood. And there's a really, really sad bit near the end where it turns out the investigators destroyed him in the speeches. And he says, they knew what I was going to say. They had arguments ready for everything. And the only person I told it to was my wife. And he goes back and he accuses her. Now, to be fair to him, he's not cruel with her. He says, look, I don't think you did it deliberately, but did you say something in front of servants or, somehow give away the game? And the mother says, I can't believe you would suspect her of doing that. She would never betray you. It was me. Punish me if you want. And he says, how can I punish the smartest person I know? Why did you do it? And she says, if you win the case, they will immediately murder you. I wanted you to lose. Oh. And he's like, you know what? Don't do it again. I still want to try to win.
Fair.
But I understand. And they're fine. The prosecutor, the person on the other side, well, he's prosecuting, so the person on the other side is his uncle. So it's already a family feud. So the family's kind of getting torn apart by this. His father dies early on, which is why he goes a lot to his mother. he has a lot of great expectations because his uncle was really, really important and had no kids. So this is, although yes, he's like literally his father's heir, like politically, everyone sees him as like the successor to his uncle. And that's why he's like destined for great things. And of course, they have some nonsense about how he's descended from like one of the gods or something as well. And there is a bit where the uncle takes him when he's younger to get trained and just gets one of his guards to beat him up, basically. And Caesar earns his respect by kicking him in the balls. And he's like, oh, I thought you would either like cry or like beg me to stop the fight or run away or something. But like you took the beating like a man initially, and then when his guard was down, found like a sneak attack. So well done. And he's like, cool, well done. I'll just go back to my mum with like my face smashed in and bloody. And
so he eats him some more.
It's kind of a rough scene to read. It's like this 30-year-old man just beating up this like 14-year-old kid. It's really rough. And he worries that he's like broken his skull at one point. He smashes him in the face. Not to hurt him. The guy feels uncomfortable doing it. And he's like, one hit to knock him down and they might let me stop. But he hits him too hard and he hears a crack. And he's like, oh no.
I gotta tell his mom. Oh no.
So that's why he's off guard and he jumps up and kicks him in the balls. But the kid is really badly hurt still, so it's kind of like, okay, this is not good. So if it sounds like I'm jumping about back and forth, it's because, as I said, that's what the book does. We start with the trial, and then we jump back to like, here's how he met his wife 20 years ago or whatever. Then we start, and then here's like a flashback about the rape scene, and it's a lot of that, you know. And let's go to Macedonia and see what's happening there, and that's the way that the story is told. I do like that one or two women are portrayed strongly, and I do like the overall story. And of course, like, I love history. Part of my degree was in Roman history. It's nice. A lot of Roman history courses start with this period with the Gracchi, actually, with those two brothers I mentioned. A very famous textbook, and also university courses based on that textbook, are called From the Gracchi to Nero. And that is seen as like, if you want to start learning about Rome, you start there. You start with the Republic was terrible. Some people tried to fix it. Then came Caesar. Then the early Empire, up as far as Nero. Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
And that is kind of like your Rome 101 course, basically.
Yeah, 50 CE or so. So yeah, you get like what, 150 years or so?
Yeah, it's a good like time period, and it is the one that most people are interested in, I guess, like the early Empire kind of stuff. So.
Well, nobody cares about the 5 good emperors. Come on, Hadrian. Trajan.
We like Hadrian a lot.
Marcus Aurelius.
And of course Marcus. Do you know what?
Antoninus.
In Mexico.
That nobody cared about.
In Mexico, I'm talking with 2 dancers about Hadrian, and this random guy and his daughter in front of me turn around, and they're just like, we like Marcus Aurelius. And I'm like, isn't he good? And they're just like, was he the only good one? And I'm like, he was the best one. So that was really nice.
I personally like Hadrian.
We like Hadrian because he built a lot of things, but like, was Marcus Aurelius the only good person? Like, philosophically, ethically, like, he's the good guy emperor, you know?
I've heard some people talking about the history, and they're like, well, you can't really say that any of them were good in any way, but they compared Marcus Aurelius to Nero, and I'm like, what?
I have controversial opinions on Nero.
Or Caligula, even.
Yeah. I have controversial opinions on Caligula. I think that Nero and Caligula did things that are good.
Putting that horse as, what is it, consul?
Yes, consul, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm... So it's weird, because I don't have that many notes about a book that is 700 pages long. Because...
No, you still talked about it for 20 minutes.
Okay, that's longer than I thought. All that really matters is the court case, not all the backing stuff. I'm going to go ahead and give one spoiler.
Yay.
Caesar loses the court case, but he wins the popularity of the people. And he has a big crowd around his house chanting his name. And he's like, right, I'm still going to have to leave because they're going to kill me, but I will come back.
Okay.
And presumably book 2 will pick up from there.
What happens to the woman?
Mytilene is the woman. I actually don't remember what happens to her. I don't know if it tells us. I think she goes off and marries the guy. I think they're fine.
Okay.
The old guy is like completely discredited, but he's like close to death anyway. I don't think that is really a big problem. they try to make up with the uncle as well. It is unclear how successful that was, but they invite him around to the house and talks to the mum a little bit to try to do something. It's a bit sad that the uncle wasn't supporting his nephew and was happy to stand on the other side. They play dirty in the court case, and at one point, during the case, Dolabella sends a note to the judge saying, yeah, we got to get rid of this guy. It's like, well, this is a very corrupt court case.
Yeah, try that in a modern court, and you go to jail.
Yeah, I mean, he should have gone to jail. It's sad because the DAC was so stacked against him. Like, they are literally like, okay, it is impossible to sue a senator. It's never been done. You cannot do it. The only reason he's allowed to try is because, like, it had been done once, like, a century before. So, like, there's a precedent that is theoretically possible, but you don't have a hope in hell of doing it.
Yeah.
You know? So it's legal to try. No one ever has that they're aware of in their own lifetimes. And it's like, well, we're going to try a senator in a court of senators, and all the jury and the judges are his friends.
Well, you can only hope that they don't like the senator.
You can hope, but unfortunately they were all very corrupt. Just before this, Sylla and Dolabella had also changed the law, so the jury was allowed to consist of senators and the class below them, equites, which are basically knights. They changed the law to take the knights out. So they protected themselves by saying, like, literally only we can be judges.
Well, what was the, like, core army called? I think...
Would that not be the equites?
Is that them?
It's tricky because equites were knights, but I think they're more of like an aristocracy. Like, they were one rank below the senators. You would have had, obviously, plebeians at the bottom. I think there's other ranks in the middle. I'm not that.
I think it might be
sure
that one.
But that might be the equites.
I think that's what Hadrian was before he became senator. And
it's a
consul.
respected rank.
Yeah.
But then they basically stop them from being judges so that only the Senate can judge the case. And then it's like, well, we don't have a chance to win. So, did I already give it a yeah?
Yes.
Okay, good. I don't need to do it again. I do recommend it if you're interested in this stuff. Just maybe wait till book 2 comes out, and then presumably it will carry on the story.